Hello friends, welcome to CEC live lectures on management accounting. We are here to continue our discussion on the topic of batch costing. This is going to be part 3 of our lectures on batch costing, and in today's lecture of mine I have planned to explain to you about calculating economic batch quantity, how to calculate that size of batch which is going to be the most economical, the most beneficial one. And we'll also be taking up some more numerical problems to enhance your understanding on batch costing. So let us start with the very basic of economic batch quantity, about which we have initially discussed in theoretical terms what is economic batch quantity. It is just like economic order quantity which we have been computing in our traditional costing methods. We were trying to identify what is my economic order quantity. So what should be that quantity of your one order which is going to be economical? That is what we were doing there. And likewise here we are trying to identify the size of the quantity of a batch which is going to be economical. When I say economical, I indicate towards the cost effectiveness of that batch size. And in previous lecture of mine I told you about how to make a comparative analysis of manufacturing in different batches and what was the impact of that change in the size of batch, change in the quantum of batch on my total cost and eventually the profitability. So here we'll first understand what is my economic batch quantity. It is basically a process of deciding the optimum size of a batch, which is basically a significant decision. So we are going to decide the optimum size of a batch, which is of course a significant decision for us. And the size of batch is going to have impact on not only your cost, basically your standing cost, but clerical and other machine setup cost as well. So if you have some cost which is fixed in nature, of course this economic batch quantity is going to make a difference to you. And if the size of batch is higher, of course the unit cost may tend to decline and it is going to have impact on your total profitability, because your cost is going to get affected. So of course eventually the impact is on your profitability. So somewhere if you are able to reduce your cost, if you are able to control your cost, if you are able to somehow limit your cost by simply changing the size of your batch, that is going to be a better idea for us, because we have to minimize our cost in any case. So let us have a look at the formula. Formula is for EBQ is under root 2 US divided by C, and let me explain what is EBQ, that is economic batch quantity. U stands for 2 is numeric 2, U stands for annual usage in units, that what is your annual consumption. S stands for setup and order processing cost, what you call as setup cost or order processing cost, and C, needless to say, it is carrying cost of 1 unit for 1 year. So it is just like economic order quantity. The only difference is there we were looking at order size, here we are looking at batch size. So my objective is to know what should be my ideal batch size, with which is going to be the economical one, with which I am going to minimize my cost. So let us have a numerical problem for that. There is a company which is asking you to compute the economic batch quantity using batch costing with this information. Information is annual demand for the component is 4,000 units. So the annual demand for this specific product or component is 4,000 units. Setting up an order processing cost is rupees 50. So here the examiner has given you the setting up and order processing cost to be rupees 50. Cost of manufacturing 1 unit is rupees 100 and storage cost per unit per annum is 10%. So other informations are given in absolute terms, whereas the storage cost or carrying cost is given in terms of ratio, that is 10%. Now the question comes in front of you or in your mind, that on which amount this need to be calculated. Needless to say, you have to take the cost of manufacturing 1 unit, that is 100 rupees, and 10% of that is going to be your effective storage cost. So storage cost per unit per annum, that is 10%, which we will be calculating. So with this information we have to calculate what should be the economic batch quantity. Annually you are going to manufacture 4,000 units because the annual demand is 4,000 units. So some people think that, sir, can we go for manufacturing in a batch size of 4,000 units? Of course you can think of, but do you have that much of resources? What is your functional layout? Can you manufacture in one go 4,000 units? And if it is so, what about the idle hours, what about the workforce availability, and what about the other things? So it's better that we calculate the economic batch quantity, that is something which is beyond our control, because here we don't know about the layout of the factory, we don't know about the availability of labor hours, we don't know about the opportunity cost of those labors, those machineries. So whatever information which is given to us, with that we are going to make a decision. Because normally in a classroom discussion, when we are solving this question, at times my learners are asking me, sir, can we manufacture, can't we manufacture in a batch of 4,000 units? It's better in one go manufacture and say bye bye to your workers that will be calling you whenever will need. But that is something which is beyond our control. That information is not provided to us, that we can think of when we practically visit a factory setup and we are having all the informations available. So here we have annual demand available, we have setting up an order processing cost available, we have cost of manufacturing one unit and storage cost. So let us calculate the EBQ. Formula is known to us, under root 2 US divided by C. 2 is numeric 2, units is basically 4,000. Setup cost was 50 rupees per unit, and as I told you, carrying cost is 10% of that total cost, which was 100 rupees. So 100 into 10%, 10 rupees. When we solve it, the value comes to be 200 units. So this 200 units is your economic batch quantity. Very simple to calculate. So now we have understood that the minimum size of a batch in this factory should be 200. So below 200 we will not go. Below 200 if we go, it is going to have the negative impact on our cost and eventually the profitability. So this is the way we calculate the economic batch quantity without having further discussion or further calculations. It is very simple to calculate. You calculate economic batch quantity, and this size is going to be economical for us. So 200 units, anything which is more than this is going to be beneficial, but this is going to be the borderline. Below this, of course, it is going to have negative impact on your cost, because we are comparing the two costs. One is your setup cost, another is your carrying cost. So I hope you must have understood how to calculate economic batch quantity. This is what we do, and alternatively, what we were discussing at the very outset, that can we manufacture in one go 4,000 units, that is something which depends upon the other informations which are available or supplied to us. So this was about economic batch quantity. Now let us have a look at another question on this batch costing. Before we proceed to that question, let me explain to you in batch costing what is our purpose. Remember, this batch costing is used at two levels. One is by cost accountant, another is by management accountant. Here we are studying this batch costing from the very perspective of a management accountant. Cost accountant is interested in knowing the cost per batch, that if we are manufacturing in this batch size, what should be my cost? Because they are having this information from the management that this is going to be your batch size and you have to manufacture. Whereas management accountant is not interested in your actual cost or reporting of your cost, because they are not behaving like a typical cost accountant or a financial accountant. They are interested in knowing that what are the possibilities of reducing this cost which you are actually incurring. So if you report that in a batch of 200 units, your cost per unit is say 5 rupees, I am more interested in knowing that can we reduce this cost to 4.5 rupees by simply changing the size of batch? Yes or no? That is what we are willing to know. So we need to know that, we need to believe that, we need to very much understand that when we are studying, when we are talking about this batch costing from the perspective of a management accountant, our objective is not at all to calculate the cost. Our objective is to know the possibilities of reducing the cost by at any level, either at the level of purchase of material or at the level of changing the size of batches or at any other level. So in batch costing, to be very specific, to be very precise, we are willing to know that whether this size of batch is going to have any impact on my total cost and eventually my profitability or not. So with this difference, we'll go ahead with another numerical problem. There is a work order for 500 units of a product which has to pass through 4 different machines. So there is a product for which you have received a work order. The total size of that order is 500 units, and this product has to pass through 4 different machines. Now there are 4 machines on which this product is going to be processed, and for all 4 machines the machine hour rate is given. Machine number 1 is having a machine hour rate of 1 rupees and 25 paisa. Machine number 2 is having a machine hour rate of 3 rupees. Machine number 3 is having a machine hour rate of 4 rupees, and the machine number 4 is going to have a machine hour rate of 2.5 rupees. So question is reporting that your production has to pass through 4 different machines, and for all these machines the machine hour rate is reported, right? Further, the question is telling us that the following expenses have been incurred on this work order. For material you have spent 20,000 rupees. For wages we have spent 1,500 rupees. For machine 1 we have worked for 200 hours. So apart from material and wages, they are reporting that machine 1 has worked for 200 hours, machine 2 has worked for 300 hours, and 3 and 4 have worked for 240 and 100 hours respectively. So this is the timing for which your machine has basically worked. So this is the information given to us. And after the work order had been executed, materials worth rupees 1,000 were returned to stores. This is the further reporting that you have not consumed the entire material. You have also returned the material to the tune of rupees 1,000 to the store, which was actually not consumed by us, or you can say it was a material which was not at all used. So it was returned to the store. Office overheads, they were estimated to be 60% of works cost. So whatever my works cost comes, 60% of that is going to be my office overheads as reported in the question. Further question is telling us that 10% of the production is going to be discarded. So whatever you manufacture, 10% of that is going to be discarded, being unsatisfactory, for which half the amount can be realized from the sale in the junk market. So it means that this discarded one also you can sell out in the junk market, but for which you will be receiving only 50% of the value. So the realizable value is only 50% for that. And they are asking you to find out the selling price per unit if 20% profit on selling price is desired. So this is a mixed kind of question wherein we are not only supposed to calculate the cost, but we are also supposed to identify the selling price per unit. We have to quote a selling price which can fetch a 20% profit on selling price. This is the expectation of management, and management is now willing to know what should be your selling price if we wish to have a profit of 20% on selling price. So with this information, let us proceed. Let us solve this question. In this question, the question is slightly different from the previous ones. Here we have to deal with the typical costing question where we shall be computing prime cost, then works cost. We shall be also making adjustment for the discarded product. We shall actually be making an adjustment for the amount which we are going to realize from the sale in the junk market, and eventually what should be the minimum price that we need to quote from our customer if we have to maintain a profit of 20% on selling price. So with this with all these permutation and combinations, let us solve this question. So we have cost of material reported here is 20,000. This cost of material is basically your RMC, that is your raw material consumed. And if you remember, while discussing the question, I told you that there is a reporting that one material amounting to rupees 1,000 were returned to store. So your effective RMC or raw material consumed comes to be rupees 19,000. It is not 20,000. Supplied material was 20,000, but consumed was only 19,000. And we have added wages to it, that is 1,500. So material and wages, all direct expenses we are adding here, and we call it prime cost. So prime cost comes to be 20,500. So in the final computation column, we shall be writing the total prime cost to be 20,500. Now we shall be adding work overheads. Now here we'll take a pause and we'll try to understand what we are doing. My dear learners, whenever work overheads are given, we have to first identify for every machine how many hours we have worked and what is that hourly rate for that machinery to identify or to calculate the work overheads. So as the question intimated us that for machine 1, 2, 3 and 4 we have worked for 200 hours, 300 hours, 240 and 100 hours respectively. So those hours we have to bring here and we have to multiply it with the rate of that, the respective rate of that machine. and the rate was also mentioned in the question. So for machine A, for instance, the 200 hours are multiplied by 1 rupees and 25 paisa per hour, because that is the hourly rate. For machine 2 it is 300 hours into 3.0. For machine 3 240 hours into 4, and for machine 4 it was 100 hours into 2.5. And when we multiply, the value comes to be 250, 900, 960 and 250 rupees. The total amount of work overhead comes to be 2360. So after passing through all 4 machines, your component or your this product has traveled with the cost of rupees 2360. So traveling from machine 1 to machine 4 is causing me a total cost of 2360, and this is nothing but your works overheads, or what you call as factory overhead, because this is going to be the moment I add this works overhead to my prime cost, it becomes works cost. So 20,500 is a prime cost, and when I add this cost of traveling from machine 1 to 4, that is 2360, it becomes 22,860. This is my works cost. And for office overhead, question reported it is 60% of works cost. So total works cost is 22,860. When I calculate 60% of that, that becomes 13,716. And once it is computed, the total cost of production is here 36,576. So in this entire process up till now, what we have done, we have dealt with the returns of material which we have returned to store, and we have learned how to calculate the work overheads when we are having 4 different machines and different hours are devoted to all different types of machines, and the rates are also different. So depending on their machine hours and their rates, we have identified the total value, and this total value is going to give me the cost of production, works cost, and eventually cost of production. After this, now we have to deal with the sale of discarded units. Now remember, this sale of discarded units is going to reduce my cost. Had it not been mentioned in this question that there is a possibility of selling this discarded units at 50%, we might not have followed this step. We might have simply gone for reducing our units. So sale of discarded units, before that we need to understand what is my total cost of discarded units. So the question reports that production discarded, which we have shown by point A, production discarded is 10%. So 10% of what? 10% of my cost of production, and cost of production comes to be 36,576. So 36,576, when I calculate 10% of that, it becomes 3657.60 rupees. So this is going to be my cost of production discarded. So 10% of your total production, what I have discarded, is going to cost me 3,657.60 paisa. And the question reports that when you are going to sell it in the junk market, you will be realizing 50% of this value, which means remaining 50% is going to be a total loss. It is 1,828.80. So we have to first understand the treatment of this. Since the question is reporting that out of this total sale of discarded units, you are going to receive 1828.80, so that is going to be subtracted from the cost of production, and now I would report my total cost is 34,747.20. My dear learners, here the examiner has given us the total order of 500 units, and nowhere it is mentioned that for 1 unit of production, these are the units of material which you need to introduce, and this is a normal wastage. So there is no mention of normal or abnormal wastage. Question is simply reporting at a later stage that you discard 10% of total units produced, and production is 10% of production is discarded, and then you can sell it at 50% of price in the junk market. So what we are doing, we are reducing our total cost of production by this realization from the sale of discarded units. Had it not been there, what we could have done, this entire computation might have gone to the working notes, and there might not have been any discussion of it. What we might have simply done is, we might have reduced the units say 10% of 500. If I say 500 unit is basically my output which I need, so more than that might have been introduced, and 10% of that is going to be a subtraction from that, and it is going to increase my per unit cost, because total cost is divided by number of units. So say if here we need 500 units, that unit could have been less than that. But since question is reporting that sale of discarded unit is at 50% of the cost, we have simply done so. So my point here is to make you understand why are we reducing the cost of production by this sale of discarded unit. And at times my learners are asking, sir, where this loss will go? This will definitely go to costing PL. This is going to be accounted for in costing profit and loss account, and eventually your profit and loss account, that is in your financial accounting. So 34,747.20 is your total cost, and I would now find out the total selling price, and question is saying 20% on selling price, 20% of your selling price. So we shall assume the selling price to be 100, total cost to be, profit to be 20%, total cost to be 100 minus 20, 80. So if 80% is 34747.2, what will be my 100%? And that comes to be 43434, 43,434, and difference will be my profit. So in this way we have computed, we have prepared the cost sheet, and now we have to we have to come to the desired solution. Examiner is willing to know that what should be the selling price per unit which we should quote if the company is willing to book a profit of 20% on selling price. What should be my selling price per unit? So very simple to calculate price to be quoted. Total sales we have computed 43434, and total units produced is 500. Of course it is my 500 unit because I have to produce this only, and selling price per unit is going to be 43434 divided by 500. When I divide it, I come to know about the value, that is selling price per unit of 86 rupees and 86 paisa. So with this calculation we will be quoting a price of 86 rupees and 86 paisa. Before I proceed to the alternative situation which we come across as an examiner, because students are having their own perception from this kind of question. There can be two different perspectives, perspectives of learners or examinees when this kind of question comes in examination. There is a student who is thinking like this, which I have shown, that 500 units are produced and we don't bother about the 10% of loss. We assume that it must have been adjusted with the total units introduced, and company must have produced 550 units and net outcome is 500 unit which we want. So that is something which is given there, right? So units produced is 500 here. So this is one way of looking at this question while quoting the price. So price to be quoted is 43434, that is the selling price, divided by 500. And remember my dear learners, I am not taking total cost here, I am taking total sales value, the total sales revenue. That is why it is telling us, it is giving us the selling price per unit as an outcome. Now looking at the alternative situation where the student is assuming that the net output is not 500. Here we have assumed that the net output is 500 units. So alternatively what can happen? Suppose if there is a student who is thinking that this sales, of course the sales value remains the same, 43434, and student assumes that the unit produced is 10%, after subtracting 10% of discarded one, that is 500 units, you have discarded 10%, and 450 units is going to be your net production. So selling price per unit will not be like the previous one, it is going to be something different, 43434 divided by 450, and of course the selling price remains the same and units have reduced, so cost will go up, and it comes to be selling price per unit is going to be 96.52 rupees. So at times learners are, examinees are giving this kind of taking this kind of assumption also, that sir, we have only manufactured 450 units. Now you must be thinking, then why did I take that logic of 500 units? The reason is the question at the very outset has mentioned that we have to complete this work order for 500 units. Right. So that is why we assumed initially that it is going to be the 500 units. But if a learner is having this kind of assumption, that can also be accepted. So in this way, my dear learners, I tried to explain you the different concepts of the different aspects of batch costing, wherein we learned how to deal with the different practical problems of batch costing. If you ask me about the advantages of batch costing, I shall quickly be telling you that it is, of course, of immense benefit for reducing the cost of production. It makes your supervision work very easy and effective. Your quality control is better assured when you are following batch costing, and what is more important is the loss of time under job costing, which is arising due to inter-job transfer of material labor, that is going to be minimized here. So with this advantages, nature and characteristics, and practical problems of batch costing, we have now come to the end of this topic of batch costing. I hope you must have understood and enjoyed today's lecture of mine. With this, I am ending it. Thank you so much.